This month alone, 3 mass attacks took place in China, resulting in dozens of casualties. Well, authorities have said that they will take measures, including strengthening the use of big data to prevent potential risks. Now, are these measures enough to tackle the underlying issue? Well, before we take a deep dive into it, CNA's Lauren Ong takes us through the recent incidents that rattled China.
Desperate cries for help by young students on the morning of November 19th in front of a school in central Hunan province when a small white SUV rammed through, injuring several people. About a week earlier, a man drove into a crowd at a sports center in the southern city of Zhuhai, killing 35 and injuring some 40 others. The two incidents add to a growing list of mass attacks in China this year. At least 8 incidents have taken place so far in 2024, sparking widespread attention and concern.
因为你难以察觉随性而起的报复性社会行为。
This video condemning so-called vicious incidents was shared more than 1,400 times on WeChat's short video sharing platform, with the content creator blaming unemployment as one of the factors contributing to the growing crimes. Another video giving tips on what to do during a knife or car attack was circulated over 10,000 times on the same platform.
有汽车冲过来，要朝汽车两侧后方跑。
This opinion piece by Shanghai-based media outlet Guancha.cn questioned why responses to such incidents are always half a beat slower, calling for more efforts in prevention rather than reaction. It's been circulated some 200,000 times on Chinese social media Weibo, with comments on the platform echoing these calls. Some emphasize the need to help people who experience injustice resolve their issues, while others urged everyone to stay strong during this period of economic downturn and social tensions. Local authorities have since vowed to double down on risk prevention efforts, following directives from President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang. For example, officials in Zhuhai are reinforcing patrols and checks in densely populated areas and urge for a thorough analysis of what they called new challenges brought by changes in the social structure. Lauren Ong, CNA, Beijing.
So how can China or other countries in Asia, for that matter, prevent mass attack incidents such as those in Zhuhai and Wuxi? For more, we are joined now by CNA's Tan Yuguan from Shanghai. Now, Yuguan, horrifying incidents. I know you've been tracking the reactions on the ground and on social media. What has been the general sentiment in China about these incidents?
Well, many netizens on Chinese social media have expressed shock at the incidents. They've also called for severe punishment. In fact, some are even openly calling for the death penalty for these assailants. Now, many feel that for personal disputes to result in so many deaths and casualties, and that is just plain insanity. Now, if you recall, assailants in the Zhuhai or in the Wuxi incident, for example, has personal disputes prior to carrying out the attacks. The Zhuhai attacker, for example, was unhappy with his divorce settlement, while the Wuxi attacker was unhappy about his internship pay. And he was also unhappy about the fact that he could not graduate from technical college. Now, the reasons of these personal disputes that have driven these assailants to do what they did have caused some netizens to call for a deeper examination of what drove these assailants to the extremes. Kelly?
Now, Yuguan, speaking of what could be driving these attackers, are you able to tell us if there are any obvious general stresses?
Well, obviously, it's open secret that, the economy has been slowing of late. Unemployment numbers are higher than what they were many years ago. And therefore, when times are bad, purse strings are tight, in general, it's less easy to gloss over things, and therefore, stress levels would go up. It's quite interesting to note that after the Zhuhai incidents, the Chinese leaders actually called for local governments to ensure to prevent further risk of such incidents from happening. They even called for local authorities to ensure social stability. Now, in that matter, some lawyers have come out on social media to say that really goes to tell you how important it is to have a robust and accessible legal system for the public to seek just resolution for their personal grievances. That said, members of the public that we have spoken to say that really, grievances and all these stresses are a fact of life, and it's really how we deal and resolve these stresses that really truly matter.
大多数的情况都是自己想办法要减压的，因为有的时候现在看那个网络也很那个的，就是看看网络上自己也会自己调节一下的，因为有的时候要有阿 Q 精神，要往好的地方想，因为困难的事情其实人人都会碰到的，就是碰到问题以后要感觉就是你办法总比困难多嘛。
当遇到压力也好，遇到生活中的压力也好，我就会通过一些其他的方式去排解自己的压力，要学会去让自己变得更健康。当然，如果有一些你觉得自己没有办法去应对的时候，我觉得就应该积极点去看医生，或者去寻求一些外界的帮助。我觉得自己的心态就很重要。当你觉得自己承受不了的时候，你就得学会去寻求第三方的帮助。
在那个压力这么大的情况下面，感觉周围其实抑郁啊或者不开心的人其实是挺多的，但是好像可能我周围朋友可能还好，他们自己都有自己的疏解方法。那就算是可能有抑郁症的朋友，他也知道可以及时去治疗，所以也还好。但是我相信肯定有很多他们是得不到，而且我听说，比如说上海的卫生精神那个中心连预约都很难预约，听说，所以就是对，那肯定远远是不够的，肯定是。
So, Yuguan, it's interesting to point out that two of them there mentioned the need to know how to find help from third party in times of stress. What is the state of mental health support in China versus other countries?
Well, the state of mental health support in China has improved quite a bit in recent years. In Shanghai, for example, it's not very, very hard to find, talks about building mental resilience or mental health awareness. That said, Shanghai is a very different place compared to the rest of China. It is a lot more cosmopolitan and also more advanced in its thinking. Statistically, the rest of China doesn't do very well in terms of mental health support. According to a 2022 report by Asia Society, that's a US NGO based with a global presence, it says that, mental health support is only available to 22 people per million. Now, that's compared to about 1,000 per million in the United States. So 22 and 1,000 per million, both are not great statistics, but it does show the kind of huge gap China has to catch up with more advanced countries as far as, mental health support is concerned. That said, the family structure in China is still very much intact, even for those people who leave their hometowns to work in cities like Shanghai. They do keep in contact with their families by various means, to keep and use that as a source of mental solace. However, of course, that is not always available for everyone. Oteli?
Yeah, 22 people to a million. That's quite a stark number. So, Yuguan, you have spoken to a few mental health experts. Generally, what are their thoughts, on the recent spate of mass attacks?
Well, they agree that more can be done as far as mental health support is concerned, but as far as how to prevent similar extreme incidents like these attacks from happening again, they do have some differing views. Now, one expert thinks that high-risk groups should be identified and then mental health support targeted at these groups. However, another expert say numbers show that, most of these attackers in these indiscriminate killings, they are not mentally ill. And therefore, these attacks are related not to individual mental illness, but more to the case of is related to the general mental health of the general public.
Most offenders in these cases have been under great mental stress, which lead to impaired control of emotion and behavior, undermining their ability in decision-making and impulse control, although they have no history of mental illness. So in short, I think these unfortunate cases are not directly related to mental illness itself, but it is closely related to the mental health of the general public as a whole.
So far, with the recent spate of mass attack incidents, all the assailants were male. I'm curious to know if Dr. Chan weighed in on why that's the case.
Yes, he did. He did weigh in on this. He says that in traditional Chinese norms, for example, Chinese males are not encouraged to talk about their problems, and thinks that is actually a problem in itself.
Oriental males tend to suppress their emotions. 我们中国有一个老话，就是男儿流血不流泪。It's a Chinese proverb that as a man, you rather shed your blood than shed your tears. So they tend to suppress their emotion and will very be reluctant to seek psychological or psychiatric help than females. And when their mental stress exceeded their ability to cope, they would just explode like an overblown balloon.
All things said, it is worth noting that there is gun control in China, and in some ways that has limited the number of casualties in most of these incidents. However, in the case of Zhuhai, it was a car that was used as a weapon, and that is indeed a worrying incident. Otelli?
Well, thanks very much for a deep dive into China's mass attacks. CNA's Tan Yu Guan reporting to us from Shanghai.